A sandstorm in the desert does not look like bad weather. It looks like the end of the world. A wall of sand moving at full speed, turning the sky completely brown, making the air impossible to breathe. You have 2 minutes before it hits. No shelter, no trees, nothing. Ancient humans faced this exact moment with nothing in their hands and nowhere to go. And what some of them did to survive is something most people today would refuse to do even to save their own life. If you have ever wondered how ancient humans survived things that would kill most of us today, drop a comment below telling me which ancient survival moment shocks you the most. Before we talk about how ancient humans survived sandstorms, you need to understand what a sandstorm actually does to a person, because most people imagine it as just wind and dust. It is not. A serious desert sandstorm carries sand particles moving at speeds that strip skin. Not irritate it, strip it. The sand gets into every opening on your body simultaneously. Your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears. Within minutes of exposure, breathing becomes genuinely difficult because the air is more sand than oxygen. The temperature inside a sandstorm in a desert environment can sit at 50 degrees or higher. The sand itself has been baking in that heat all day, and it hits your exposed skin like opening an oven door directly into your face. Ancient humans caught in open desert during a storm like this had a survival window measured in minutes, not hours. Minutes. After that, the combination of heat, dehydration, and sand in the lungs started shutting the body down one system at a time. So what did they actually do? The most important thing ancient humans learned about sandstorms was not how to survive them. It was how to see them coming. Desert sandstorms do not arrive without warning if you know what to look for. The horizon changes color before the storm arrives. A specific brown haze appears at ground level while the sky above is still clear. Animals behave differently. Insects disappear. Birds stop flying and land immediately. The wind shifts direction and drops suddenly before picking back up from a completely different angle. Ancient humans who lived in desert environments learned to read every one of these signals, not from a book. From watching people die when they missed them and surviving when they did not, this early warning system was everything. Because the difference between being caught completely in the open and having even 10 extra minutes of preparation was often the difference between living and not. But warnings only help if you have somewhere to go. And in the open desert, that was never guaranteed. When a sandstorm arrived faster than expected and there was no cave or shelter nearby, ancient humans had a limited set of options. All of them were unpleasant. Some of them were extreme. The first thing they did was get low. Flat on the ground, face down. The worst of a sandstorm moves at ground level where the heaviest sand particles travel. Getting as low as possible reduced exposure to the thickest part of the storm. They covered their faces with whatever fabric or animal skin they had. Pulled clothing tight around every exposed area of skin, and they stayed completely still. Moving during a sandstorm burns energy and increases breathing rate. Both are dangerous when the air is full of sand. Ancient humans learned to go almost completely still and breathe as shallowly as possible through whatever covering they had over their faces. But covering your face with cloth only filters so much. And a storm that lasts hours rather than minutes pushes sand through any loose covering eventually. This is where ancient humans did something that the thumbnail of this video shows directly. And it is the part most people find genuinely hard to believe. When ancient humans had a recently killed large animal nearby and a sandstorm was coming, some of them used the carcass as shelter. This is not a myth. This is documented behavior found across multiple desert cultures and referenced in historical survival accounts from desert regions. The interior of a large animal carcass provides protection from sand, wind, and to some degree heat. The body of a camel, a horse, or a large desert animal killed recently enough that its body is still intact creates a physical barrier that sand cannot easily penetrate. This sounds extreme by any modern standard. And it is. The smell alone would be overwhelming. The conditions inside would be deeply unpleasant in ways that are hard to describe. But ancient humans facing a wall of sand with nothing else available were not making a comfort decision. They were making a survival calculation. Unpleasant for a few hours or dead. That choice is much simpler than it sounds when you are actually facing it. Researchers studying ancient desert survival techniques found that the use of animal carcasses as emergency shelter appears across completely unrelated desert cultures, not as a common practice. As a last resort, enough people survive to pass forward as knowledge. The fact that it shows up independently in multiple cultures separated by thousands of miles tells you something important. It worked often enough to be worth remembering. Ancient humans who lived in desert environments permanently did not just react to sandstorms. They prepared for them specifically. Clothing in desert cultures was never just about modesty or warmth. It was engineered for sand. Long, loose layers that covered every part of the body while still allowing air circulation. Head coverings that could be pulled across the face, instantly leaving only the eyes exposed. Eye coverings made from thin strips of material with tiny gaps that allowed limited vision while blocking most sand particles. Researchers studying ancient Egyptian, Arabian, and Saharan cultures found that desert clothing developed thousands of years ago shares almost identical design principles with modern protective gear used in desert environments today. The loose wrap, the full body coverage. The face is covered with eye protection. Ancient humans arrived at the same solutions modern engineers did, just using animal skin, plant fiber, and woven cloth instead of synthetic materials. They also built their permanent camps with sandstorms in mind. Settlements in ancient desert regions were almost always positioned with natural rock formations on the windward side, the direction most storms came from. These formations were not chosen for beauty or convenience. They were chosen because they broke the wind before it reached the camp. Here is the part of surviving a sandstorm that most people never think about. The storm itself is not what kills you most of the time. What kills you is what comes after. A sandstorm strips moisture from everything it touches. Your skin loses water through exposure to the hot moving air. Your respiratory system loses water with every breath you take through sand-filled air. By the time a long storm ends, an ancient human who survived it was severely dehydrated, even if they had not moved a single muscle for hours. In a desert environment where water was already scarce before the storm, the dehydration that followed was often more dangerous than the storm itself. Ancient humans in desert regions solved this the same way they solved most survival problems, by planning ahead. Water stored in sealed containers before a storm hit was protected from contamination by sand. Ancient desert cultures developed water storage containers that could be sealed tightly against sand penetration. Ostrich eggshells sealed with natural resins. Animal bladders tied off and buried. Clay vessels with fitted lids. Finding water after a storm was also something ancient humans learned to do systematically. Sand redistributes during a storm, and the patterns it leaves behind can reveal where underground moisture exists beneath the surface. Ancient desert survivors learned to read these patterns the way a modern geologist reads soil samples, not through science. Through generations of watching and remembering what worked. Everything that kept ancient humans alive during sandstorms had one thing in common. None of it was figured out by one person in one moment. It was built up across hundreds of generations of people making mistakes, surviving, and passing what they learned to the next group. The reading of storm signals, the clothing design, the use of natural shelter, the water storage, the positioning of camps. Every single piece of survival knowledge that ancient desert humans carried was accumulated over time through direct experience. The oldest generation in any ancient desert group was the most valuable person in that group during a storm. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest, because they had seen more storms than anyone else. They remembered which direction the worst ones came from. They knew how long they typically lasted. They knew what the sky looked like the day before a bad one arrived. That knowledge, held in the memory of older people and passed directly to younger ones, was the most important survival technology ancient desert humans ever had. More important than any tool or shelter they ever built. So here is what surviving a 50-degree sandstorm actually looked like for ancient humans. Reading signals in the sky and animal behavior hours before the storm arrived. Getting low and covering every part of the body the moment it hits. Using whatever shelter existed, including the inside of a dead animal when nothing else was available. Drinking stored water the moment the storm passed, and relying on the knowledge of older people who had survived exactly this before. None of it was easy, none of it was clean, and none of it came from a single brilliant idea. It came from thousands of years of people facing the same wall of sand, making the best decision they could with what they had, and passing forward what worked. The next time you see a weather warning on your phone and move indoors without thinking about it, remember that ancient humans faced the exact same sky with none of those options. And a surprising number of them made it through anyway. If this changes how you see desert survival, subscribe. And drop a comment telling me which part of this you would have struggled with the most. Because honestly, I think we all know the answer to that one.